Welcome back as we proceed on to share repurchases. We first learn the different types of share repurchase methods, followed by learning effects of share repurchases on the company's earnings per share and book value per share. Let's dive right in. Simply put, share repurchase is a form of distribution to benefit shareholders. Instead of paying the cash directly to shareholders as dividends, companies buy back their own shares such that the rest of the outstanding shares in the market are worth more per share. There are 4 common methods used for share repurchase: open market transactions, fixed price tender offer, Dutch auction, and repurchase by direct negotiation. Due to varying rules, some markets may not allow all methods. Outside the United States and Canada, almost all share repurchases occur in the open market. Open market transactions is the most favored method by the companies, as it allows them to buy back their shares in the open market at the most affordable terms. This is because there's no legal obligation to undertake or complete the repurchase program even after it's announced. Shareholder authorization is required for open market purchase for companies listed in Europe, but not for US companies. As such, authorizations can last several years. Some investors see it as some form of support for the share price. Sometimes a company will make a fixed price tender offer to repurchase a specific number of shares at a fixed price that is typically at a premium to the current market price. For example, if a stock is selling at $20 a share, a company might offer to buy back 3 million shares from current shareholders at $22. If shareholders are willing to sell more than 3 million shares, the company will typically buy back a pro rata amount from each shareholder. So in this case, if all the shareholders accept an offer to sell all their shares for $22, the company will buy back 1.5 million shares from shareholder A, 1 million shares from shareholder B, and 0.5 million shares from shareholder C. By setting a deadline for shareholder acceptance, a fixed price tender offer can be accomplished quickly. A Dutch auction is also a tender offer to existing shareholders, but instead of specifying a fixed price for a specific number of shares, the company stipulates a range of acceptable prices. By specifying a range rather than a fixed price, a Dutch auction can help the company uncover the minimum price at which it can buy back the desired number of shares. Using our same example, the company may specify a range of $21 to $24 for each share instead of a fixed price of $22. Each shareholder would then indicate the number of shares and the lowest price at which he or she would be willing to sell. Bids are accepted based on lowest price first until the desired quantity is filled. The transaction price for all bids will be based on highest accepted bid price. So in this case, if these are the prices and quantities the shareholders offer at, the company would first buy back 2 million shares from shareholder B because it is the lowest bid, and just 1 million shares from shareholder A because that would fill the 3 million shares that the company wants to repurchase. As such, shareholder C will not get any of its bids filled. The price paid would be $21.50 for all shares. Like fixed price tender offer, Dutch auctions can also be accomplished in a short time period because a deadline can be set. And lastly, repurchase by direct negotiation entails purchasing shares from a major shareholder. There could be various reasons, but one common reason is to try to prevent an activist shareholder from gaining representation on the board of directors or from attempting a hostile takeover. In such cases, the negotiated price is often at a premium over the market price. Another reason could be simply that the large shareholder has an urgent need to raise cash. Such repurchases are usually made at discount to market price, indicating the weak negotiating position of the large shareholder. Now that we've learned the methods of share repurchase, let's study how it differs from cash dividends on the company's financials. We've learned earlier that when a firm pays out cash dividends, the cash leaves the company's books and equity is reduced by the amount of cash paid out. Sometimes dividends are not paid in cash, but in the form of new shares, known as stock dividend. Don't confuse stock dividend with share repurchase. When stock dividend is paid, no cash leaves the company, so the total amount of equity remains the same. However, as there are more outstanding shares in the market, each share is now worth less. We've learned that a stock dividend, stock split, and reverse stock split are corporate actions that do not change the shareholder's wealth or the company's balance sheet, so they have no effect on the total value of the common stock. In contrast, share repurchases can be seen as an alternative to cash dividend payments. The cash also leaves the company's balance sheet, so the effect on the balance sheet is the same as for cash dividend. The difference here is that there are outstanding shares that have been repurchased and placed in the company's treasury, so they're not considered for future dividends, voting, or computing earnings per share or book value per share. As there are now a fewer number of outstanding shares, the earnings attributable to each share is increased, thus increasing the value of each share. This means that shareholder wealth is increased even though the shareholder does not receive cash. Let's make some comparisons with some hypothetical figures. Before the distribution, the company has 18 million shares outstanding, with a market price of $20 per share. Latest earnings was $18 million. Book value of equity before dividend or repurchase was $450 million. The book value per share was therefore $25 per share, and earnings per share was $1 before dividend or share repurchase. Let's say the company paid out $60 million in cash dividend. The remaining equity would be $390 million. The number of outstanding shares would still be 18 million, so the book value per share would drop to $21.67. Earnings per share would still be $1, as the number of outstanding shares remains the same. In contrast, if the company used the $60 million to repurchase the shares at their market price of $20 per share, it would have repurchased 3 million shares, so the outstanding shares will be reduced to 15 million. $60 million cash is removed from its balance sheet, so remaining equity would also be $390 million. So in this case, book value per share would increase to $26. Earnings per share would also increase to $1.20, as there are now fewer outstanding shares. Do note that while it is always the case that EPS will increase after share repurchase, it's not always the case that book value per share would increase after share repurchase. It depends on the repurchase price. Like in this case, the shares were repurchased at $20 per share, which is lower than the original $25 book value per share. Since less cash was used to purchase something of greater value, the BVPS increased. So if we reverse the argument, that is, if the shares were repurchased at a price greater than $25, the BVPS would have decreased. As a practice, let's say the company used the $60 million to repurchase its shares at $30 per share instead. Calculate the BVPS and EPS after the share repurchase. Pause the video now and work out your answer. And we're back. In this case, the company is only able to repurchase 2 million shares, so the number of outstanding shares becomes 16 million. Use this to divide the remaining equity of $390 million, we have a BVPS of $24.38. As expected, the BVPS has dropped since the company paid more than book value to repurchase the shares. Earnings per share, however, increased to $1.125. Earnings per share always increases after a share repurchase as the number of outstanding shares is reduced. So, to summarize what we've learned, EPS always remains the same after cash dividend is paid. This is because the number of outstanding shares remains the same. In contrast, EPS always increases after share repurchase using cash as the number of outstanding shares is reduced. We emphasize using cash here, as we'll learn in the next lesson that share repurchase by issuing new debt may not necessarily lead to this outcome. Book value per share always decreases after cash dividend, as total equity is now lower. In contrast, BVPS can increase or decrease after a share repurchase. If the repurchase price is lower than the original BVPS, the BVPS should increase. If the repurchase price is higher than the original BVPS, the BVPS should decrease. And to conclude this lesson, let's have some practice. QBB Incorporated has 30 million shares outstanding and has just reported net income of $100 million. QBB shares are trading at $40, and the company is considering using its excess $80 million cash to repurchase its shares at 25% premium over market price. What is the change in EPS and BVPS if the book value of equity is currently $1.8 billion? Pause the video now and work out your answer. And we're back. First, let's calculate the number of outstanding shares after the repurchase. Original shares outstanding is 30 million, and the company used $80 million to repurchase shares at $50 each. Do make sure that you're using the repurchase price here, which is at a 25% premium over market price. Punch these into your calculator, we have 28.4 million outstanding shares after the repurchase. Next, the change in EPS is the new EPS after repurchase minus the original EPS. We get an increase of 19 cents. Likewise, the change in BVPS is the new BVPS minus the original BVPS. Do make sure that you've deducted the cash used for repurchase from the book value of equity to calculate the new BVPS. You should get an increase of 56 cents in BVPS. And to verify, the repurchase price of $50 is lower than the original book value, which is $60. That's why BVPS increased after the share repurchase. And that concludes this lesson on share repurchase and its effects on the company's EPS and BVPS. Next, we shall study the considerations when choosing between cash dividend and share repurchase. See you soon.